Hello again. So in this week's video, I want to give you guys 4 steps to changing your negative thinking habit because negative thinking sucks, let's be honest. And it can really affect your relationships, your career, your health, and really your entire life. And honestly, nobody really wants to be around a negative Nancy, right? So today I want to give you some steps on how to change that that negative thinking habit, because negative thinking really is a habit that you've created, and some of us have created it years and years ago. So it's a deeply embedded habit. But the good news is that habits can be broken and you can create new habits. So you aren't stuck with the negative thoughts that pop up, and every negative thought can actually be transformed into a positive one. It just takes some practice. So here are some ways to change that negative thinking habit. So step 1 would be to identify your thought patterns. And this is the first step to changing the negative thinking pattern, is to identify how you think right now. I have a free 15-page Overcome Anxiety Kickstart Guide and workbook, and I have you work through this in that workbook. So why should we track this? Why should we track what our thinking pattern is right now? We track this because if we can note our thought patterns or even our thought habits, then we can identify when our thoughts are realistic and if it's the anxiety talking or if it's just our overthinking or our negative thinking talking. And it's a way to be proactive. When we know which events, or settings are triggering our anxiety in us, then we can be more proactive, and we can kind of tell ourselves, okay, this is going to be something that's going to trigger my negative thinking and anxiety, so I'm going to pay attention to my thought habits. We can prepare for strategies to prevent the same anxious thoughts and anxious feelings from popping up when we have to face them in that triggering situation. So, for example, like if I'm aware that I'm prone to being a negative thinker, right now, it's just say right now you are a negative thinker and you've noticed that about yourself. If you know that you're prone to negative thinking, then it will be more, you can be more logical when you're feeling anxious and having those crappy thoughts start to flow in. So again, in my Overcome Anxiety Kickstart Guide and workbook, I have you track your anxious thoughts for 7 days. And this can help you to start noticing and identifying your thought patterns and which thinking traps you tend to fall into. And in the workbook, I list 4 thinking traps that a lot of us that are anxious can fall into. So just to give you an idea, some of those thinking traps could be catastrophizing. So if something happens, then you think the worst of everything that's going to happen. Another one is all or nothing thinking. So like, for example, if you haven't met your goal, then it's just, you're a failure, or, it's all or nothing. You don't feel like there is no in between. It's all black and white. Another one is overgeneralizing. So say you go to give a speech and you totally sucked at it, or you threw up on stage, or whatever it is that you did during that speech that you felt, was a fail or wasn't a very good speech. Then now you you have this thought in your mind that, oh, I suck at speeches. I'm never going to be good at giving a speech. And, you totally overgeneralize every single speech for the rest of your life. You're just going to suck at speeches, and that's all there is to it. Another thinking trap could be the negative filter, which is what we're going to talk about today. You have basically a filter that only filters out everything negative. So you don't see anything that's positive, that's not even in your mind. The only thing that you see are the negative things. Another thinking trap is jumping to conclusions. And I can vouch for this one for sure. In the past, I used to definitely jump to conclusions, and, one thing would happen and I would just think, my mind would just overthink everything, and it would jump to this and that and this and that, and what if, and what if, and what if. And so jumping to conclusions is a huge thinking trap that a lot of people with anxiety can get stuck in. Mind reading. This is, a lot of people with social anxiety tend to have this. Or just anybody with anxiety in general. Mind reading can be like, you feel like you can read people's minds, and you say things like, oh, they all hated me, or I shouldn't have said that, they must think the worst of me. You're thinking for them. You're feeling like you can read someone's mind and know what they're feeling about you. Blaming is another thinking trap. This can come with kind of the victim mentality, where anything that happens is happening to you, and you're blaming somebody else for it. You never take responsibility for things that happen in your life. And another one, now that, like I said, there's 14 of them in that workbook that I have for you, but this is just, I guess, 8 of them that I've listed for you. The must or should. So you feel like you should be able to handle all the things, for example, or you must be able to do this. And that comes with previous limiting beliefs and previous, your upbringing and things that you feel like you should be able to do. So those are just a few of the thinking traps that I list in that anxiety workbook. And if you haven't downloaded the free 15-page anxiety workbook, I will link that in the description. So be sure to sign up and download that. It's totally free. It's just a way for you to kind of get control of your thoughts, or be able to notice your thoughts so that you can actually start being aware and start to control them. So step 2 to getting rid of your negative thinking is awareness. And this one is huge. Identifying the negative thought is one of the biggest things, because a lot of times those of us that are negative thinkers, we don't even realize, it's such an embedded habit that we don't even realize that we're doing it. And so being able to stop and just be aware and notice that a negative thought is happening can be really powerful. So, and just being able to catch that thought. And this can go back to, like I said, having an anxiety log. Like I said, I have you work through that in the workbook, but you can just create an anxiety log anywhere. You can just get a sheet of paper, or you can do it in a journal and just write out everything, anytime that you feel a negative thought pop up, or you feel you say something negative, just write it down, just to get yourself aware of how often you're doing it. Step 3 is to evaluate. So first you've noticed a negative thought, and now in this step you're going to evaluate that thought for accuracy. So you're aware of this negative thought, and now what do you do with it? You're going to test the validity of that thought. You're going to challenge this thought. So the goal here is to take a hard look at your situation and belief, and then make an accurate judgment. Because a lot of times our thoughts is truly the anxiety talking, and the anxiety is not you. So it's just your anxiety trying to come up with all of the reasons why you either shouldn't do something or whatever. So what you can do is, when you have this negative thought, whether it's about yourself or whatever the negative thought is, ask yourself these questions. Am I ignoring any evidence that could contradict this thought? Or how likely is it that I'm seeing this for worse than what it really is? Is this a possible thought, or is it a probable thought? There is a difference. Is this something that will probably happen, or is it something that could possibly happen? Because there's a lot of possibilities of what could happen or what you can think, but is this something that's probable? Another question could be, what would I say to someone I care about if I had this thought, or if they had this thought? And I ask this because we almost always are super hard on ourselves than we are on others. And some of the things that we say to ourselves, we would never say to someone, someone else that we know. So if you can kind of switch your brain and think, how would I respond to someone else if they said this negative thing to me? So step 4 is to replace that thought. So now you've identified that this thought is indeed a negative thought from your negative thinking trap. And now you've evaluated the thought for accuracy and deemed it inaccurate. So now what? Now we're going to replace the thought with one that is accurate and better serving. So you're going to reframe it into a new one, and you're going to replace it with an actual true thought. So for example, if you catch yourself thinking something like, oh, I'll never be able to afford the car that I want. Like, really, is it really never? You're never going to be able to afford the car you want? Like, how accurate is that? That's not true, right? So you can replace that thought with something that you would tell a friend who came to you with this phrase. Say your friend walked up and said, oh, I'm never going to be able to afford this car. What would you say to your friend? You could change it and say something like, I can create a money-saving plan so that I can afford my dream car. Because it's really not never. That's not true. So so those are the 4 steps. So the first step was to identify your thought patterns. The second step was to be aware when you do have negative thoughts. So identify the negative thought. Step 3 was to evaluate the thought for accuracy. Make sure that it is a true thought, or make sure that it's a true thought, or if it's something that's just your anxiety talking. And the 4th step is to replace the thought with something more positive and something that's more accurate. So those are my 4 tips. I do have a few extra tips for you, bonus tips, to help you stop the negative thinking habit. And so that would be to, I guess, like detach yourself from the thoughts and view the thought as an outside observer. And in the book, I read this book called, actually I've got it right here for you. It's called The Untethered Soul, and it's by Michael Singer. I don't know if you guys can see that. Can you see the book there? The Untethered Soul. This is a really good book if you have issues or having a hard time with thoughts and just the overactive mind. Read that book. It's a really good one. It's called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And he uses this technique and kind of pretends that this negative thought is just a jabbering, annoying roommate. It's just brilliant the way that he puts it in this book. So he calls it your inner roommate. So it's just this roommate that's just like jab, 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 like saying all this negative stuff. So you kind of, the point is to remove that thought from your head, because that thought is not you. So remove it from your head and have it kind of be like a outside observer. This is just somebody who's on the outside that's just jab, jab, jab. So that's one tip. And I do that all the time. It sounds weird that like you're almost like talking to yourself, but I do it all the time, and trust me, it works. Another bonus tip that I have for you is to avoid thought stopping. The more you try to stop a negative thought from coming or happening, the more you're going to think about it. If I tell you to stop thinking about a pink elephant, you're going to think about a pink elephant. So you cannot stop a thought, but you can label a thought as that's just my anxiety talking and it's not the truth. And then let that thought pass through you. And my last bonus tip is to make a list of all the things that you're good at and keep that somewhere visual. And that way, when you're feeling negative or crappy about yourself, you can go and read your list for just a quick pick-me-up. And this is something that I've done before. You know, I've done it I worked with a coach, and I did this before, and I wrote out all of my good qualities and all of my strengths. And when you're feeling crappy, it can be really hard to even think of or come up with your strengths. So if you have that kind of posted somewhere, and that way when you're feeling down or you're feeling really negative about yourself, you can go and just read that, and just gives you like a kind of a reminder that you do have good qualities, and maybe you're just having a hard time at the moment or something. So so those are my tips for you today. Let's see if there's anything else that I want to tell you about. Oh, one important note. So negative thinking, like I said, is a bad habit that you've created some time ago. And like I said, some of us have created that habit years ago. So you've had this it's been embedded in you for years. It can take some time and some concentration to replace the new habit. It will feel tedious, and you will get frustrated because you will be catching these negative thoughts after negative thoughts for probably a few weeks. But with consistent practice, your mind will take to that new habit, and soon it'll be like second nature. Just like right now, second nature is the negative thinking, right? So if you can practice this with consistency and keep trying and keep going at it, eventually your mind will pick up that new habit, and that will be your second nature. So just remember to be kind to yourself, be proud of yourself, because you are trying, and you're doing something is better than doing nothing. So just keep that in mind. Be proud of yourself. You're trying. And so if you're struggling with negative thinking and are having a hard time getting a handle on it, you can sign up for my free anxiety breakthrough mini session, and we can come up with a plan to get you some support. And I'll put the link for that in the comments. So yeah, I think that's all I have for you guys today. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It really helps get YouTube to know that my videos are worth watching. So I'd really appreciate it if you guys would give it a thumbs up if you liked it. And if you like my content here, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. Bye.